Elisa Choy is a digital strategist and the election whisperer, and her predictions for the last federal election were uncannily correct. And we welcome you once again, Elisa Choy.
Thank you for having me. Hello again, Peter.
You fascinate me. So
I'm shocked. I wasn't expecting you to say fascinating.
Well, yes, your work is extraordinary. I imagine you're in great demand, Elisa.
Well, actually, in this round of election coverage, not many Australian media were interested. They were happy to go with their standard bench of people.
Now, the House of Representatives in America has fallen to the Republicans, which proves really that Americans are not interested so much in democracy. They're not interested in the rights of women. They're not interested in controlling ubiquitous gun ownership. And they're more interested in Trump making another run and overturning democracy with insurrections, etc. Am I being pessimistic, Elisa?
Unfortunately, that is some clear themes we're seeing. But in the Senate race for the 8 states that we were looking at very closely, where they had the tightest races in contest, I'm seeing a story that it's actually in favour of the Democrats as my overarching prediction. So that gives us some hope.
You're predicting the status quo remains, which is 50 Democrats and 50 Republicans, with Vice President Kamala Harris keeping control.
Correct.
So you think there'll be no change?
In this race, or in this round, no change, but just with the 8 key states we were looking at.
So you're predicting that Arizona returns Democratic senators, Georgia, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, but Wisconsin returns Republicans, as does North Carolina, Ohio, and New Hampshire.
Yes.
And when will we know?
When will we know? Well, the live results at the moment are showing that so far 4 out of 8 are correct.
Good. So you didn't predict the House of Representatives, Elisa?
No, because firstly, when we look at this, it's the most efficient way to predict an outcome, and the House has 430 odd seats and candidates times 2. It was just too much of a mammoth task, and through the research in the background to understand what was likely to happen, overarching theme was the Republicans were going to control the House. So then,
well, this is common in half-term elections, isn't it? During a president's incumbency, usually it goes the opposite way to the whatever the politics, whatever the party of the president is.
Yes, correct. It's just a phenomenon, but also too, since 2020, the world has become more complicated and more anxiety-driven, and lots of world events are just, gripping the way in which our lives are lived in all around the world. And so I think, unfortunately, the president of the day gets blamed for a lot of these things. Yes. And people tend to gravitate towards negative news more than positive news.
Yes, indeed. The economy is a big issue, of course, as it is here.
Yes, the economy is a huge issue, and in all the 8 states that we focused on, the economy was clearly showing negative sentiment towards Biden, and it's definitely going to be an Achilles heel for all the Democratic races in those states. However, there were other themes that were also very strong, counteracting the push towards a Republican vote.
Such as?
Abortion is the first one. It's the first issue, the top issue that we rated as transformational. And what that means is it's deeply important, highly charged, very dynamic. And in all the 8 states, abortion was number 1. So when we're looking at abortion, we also looked at, is the pro-abortion movement gaining more traction than the pro-life movement? And our assessment was that in general, it looks like people are more aligned to the pro-choice, pro-abortion / Democrat movement. So,
but we haven't seen that in the House of Representatives results.
No, I mean, I didn't. I can't comment on the House because we didn't really look at that. But I think abortion has been on the ticket for a couple of states, and the female fury is real. So the Roe versus Wade decision was earlier in the year, and
Yes.
women around the world have been enraged ever since then.
Of
And
course.
if you remember back to the Australian federal election, women were also enraged towards the outgoing Prime Minister. And that fury can be silent or it can be very loud, but in the data, it was very strong.
Really. And it beat, as the top issue, it beat the economy.
It beats the economy because of the fact of the emotional intensity that we were picking up.
Yes.
Because remember, it's emotions that drive people's behaviour.
And voting rights and democracy was an issue too.
Yes, in this round, we were seeing the issue of voting rights and freedom and democracy being challenged. So, again, this goes back to civil rights. So, in the country at the moment, people are being challenged as to what they believe freedom and rights means. And what we're seeing in the data was that voting rights was particularly strong as an issue for a lot of these states.
How are voting rights being suppressed?
Well, there are things such as hurdles in order to get registered to vote. Like in Australia, it's compulsory.
Yep.
But in the US, you have all these things that you need to do to register.
Yes.
And so part of the suppression has been little tactics like, oh, you need to have a voting ID, you need to do this, you need to sign these papers, you need to do X, Y, Z. It makes it more difficult to vote.
And this goes back to the Jim Crow laws, where African Americans, yes, you can vote, but you firstly have to tell us how many jelly beans are in this jar. Oh, sorry, no, you're wrong. No, you can't vote. That sort of arbitrary.
Exactly. And also the issues of early voting, do they count that?
Yes.
And also the fact that voting is done on a weekday, which makes it very difficult for people who are working, and voting locations might not be accessible.
And Trump is still saying that he was cheated of the presidency in the presidential election, and that I imagine is on his supporters' minds. That they feel that it's no doubt that democracy is failing in America.
Oh, well, I think lots of things are failing, and it's being questioned. And elections are the perfect opportunity to exercise your voice. And the Trump movement, or the MAGA theme, the Make America Great Again theme, we've been watching as well. And it's very interesting. It's very intense, but the overall sentiment towards MAGA in all of these key states we looked at was negative sentiment, meaning it's feared and rejected.
What of that Mehmet Oz? Was he? Because he was a high-profile Republican candidate. Was he elected or not?
No, he lost. So the recent results have come in, and the Democrat John Fetterman has taken the Senate seat.
Because I saw on YouTube, I saw an ad he made, which was all about guns. I love guns. I love hunting. I want everybody to have guns for their personal protection and for the protection of this nation. Get guns, 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 guns. That was his ad.
Well, it was misguided because according to our analysis of the issues in Pennsylvania, guns was not a top issue. So it was a issue, but not the top. There were voting rights, democracy, MAGA, and abortion, healthcare, and economy and education that were more important.
And MAGA, how is Trump influencing this? And everyone expects now Trump to announce his candidacy for the presidency again next Tuesday, I think. Was he waiting to see these results, or has his popularity declined, or what do you know of him?
When we were assessing Trump and his influence on this election in general, he still has very strong influence. However, it has waned since 2020. So the MAGA movement really is the Trumpian Republican far-right movement. And given how strong we saw the engagement in the MAGA themes here, it shows that he does have strong ability to move people across a narrative.
Well, clearly, most of those Republicans who've just been elected or re-elected today are Trumpian, and they back Trump. So he's still in the game.
Oh, he definitely still is in the game, and I think I wouldn't be surprised if he announces he's going to run for 2024.
No, well, that's the plan, I think. Next Tuesday. So your predictions, your analysis is holding up, Elisa Choy.
So far, I think the two states that are the most contentious and have always been and still are right to this point in time are Georgia and Nevada.
And how do you do this at long distance in a country not your own, Elisa? How do you do this analysis?
Because our world data set is the internet, we can do this from any location in the world. And essentially, of course, it's more difficult to get on-the-ground context, but most of the heavy lifting in the analysis starts with the AI element, which is assessing the content online, which can be done anywhere in the world. The difficulty or the challenge in this election was obviously I'm not as close to the issue, so I had to rely on a lot of research and interviews with people who are more aware of the political scene in the US. And so based on the sort of the qualitative and the quantitative information and the clear signals we're seeing in the data through these themes, that's how we make the calls. So you can't beat the data in this case because it doesn't rely on opinions, and that's why polling has always been, I guess, more and more questionable in relation to elections.
Yes, indeed, as we've seen time and time again. So, but you're not, here you would be feeling it as well as you did in the last federal election, and you felt that very well. It's not just data, it's or is it data? Am I imagining you feeling the mood of your own country, Elisa?
Well, I think Australia, as the whole world is watching this election because there's a lot of themes that resonate with our country as well. Not to the extent that they have it in the US, but the question of the democracy and what does it mean to be left or right is always so sticky and contentious. And I do feel some of those issues are very strong. I mean, the abortion issue, for one, it would never stack up in Australia to have that as an issue for an election. It just wouldn't happen.
No.
Gun control doesn't happen.
No.
Voting rights doesn't happen.
No.
So there are some very specific US issues. But as a female, obviously you feel the fury because, it's who would ever thought that abortion would be the number one issue for an election in the United States?
Well, I mean, women particularly feel robbed of the right to decide what happens with their own bodies. It's shocking.
Well, women, including children, female children as well.
That's right, and no, it's a disastrous decision from the Trump American Supreme Court. Elisa, you continue to fascinate me, and you're always welcome on this show. And I thank you very much for your analysis, and wish you well.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.